I work as a night guard at a gas station. It has some unusual rules. I had always been skeptical about the supernatural. Ghost stories, urban legends, and the like had never really influenced my beliefs, but that changed after my initial shift as a security guard at a 24-hour gas station located on the outskirts of town. What I anticipated being a straightforward job, merely a means to cover expenses, quickly turned into something else. My duties involved not only overseeing the station, but also managing the odd drunk driver or boisterous teenager and ensuring nobody lingered too long in the parking lot. Upon applying, the job seemed simple enough: decent pay, serene nights, and I had no issue with the solitude, which I actually found appealing. The gas station was nothing special, perched on the rim of a lengthy, meandering road that faded into obscurity. Its most notable feature was the harsh fluorescent lighting flickering above the fuel pumps, projecting elongated shadows across the parking lot. The interior was equally mundane, lined with shelves of snacks, a cooler filled with energy drinks and sodas, and a checkout counter manned by my co-worker, Ray. A veteran of the night shift, Ray was probably in his late 40s or early 50s and bore the hallmarks of a man who had seen too many sunrises from the wrong side of the day. His complexion was ashen, his hair sparse, and his eyes carried a perpetually distant gaze that left me wondering if he ever truly rested. He claimed to have been working there for years, though he seldom spoke unless necessary. That night, as I clocked in and retrieved my flashlight, Ray was stationed behind the counter, nursing a cup of coffee while his gaze was fixed on the parking lot. He acknowledged my presence with a nod, but remained silent initially. Curious, I attempted some light conversation. "How's the night been so far?" I inquired. Ray paused, taking a deliberate drag from his coffee, his voice raspy from years of smoking. "Quiet, just the way I like it." Intrigued, I followed up. "Anything I should be aware of?" Settling in for what I expected to be a routine shift. Ray briefly met my gaze before returning his attention to the parking lot. "Actually, yes," he began hesitant. "There are a few things you need to know, mostly rules that'll keep you out of trouble." My curiosity piqued. I raised an eyebrow. "Rules? Like what?" Ray glanced around warily before leaning in closer to whisper. "I'll explain them throughout the night," Ray said, his voice calm, yet inscrutable. "Some things you have to witness firsthand to really grasp." I was on the verge of probing further when he added a stern warning. "And one more thing, don't ask too many questions." As the night unfolded, time seemed to crawl. Other than the sporadic visitors stopping to refuel, the shift was uneventful. I patrolled the parking lot regularly, monitored the perimeter, and kept a vigilant eye on the fuel pumps. Ray remained at his post behind the counter, continuously observant and intermittently sipping his coffee. It was around 1 a.m. when Ray abruptly cleared his throat, signaling something serious. "There's something you need to know," he stated gravely. "First rule," I paused mid-step and faced him, intrigued. "If you see a young boy about 7 or 8 wearing a red jacket, don't interact with him. Don't even acknowledge his presence. Just let him go about his business and leave." Ray's voice was steady. "He appears occasionally, mostly late at night, but no matter what, do not speak to him." "And if he asks for help?" I inquired, expecting some form of joke to lighten the mood. Ray's expression remained unchanged, and he didn't meet my eyes. "You don't want to know," he murmured. I decided not to push for more details, though the idea of a child roaming the gas station at such hours was deeply troubling. Hours passed, marked by another period of quiet. Then Ray broke the silence once more. "Second rule, Charity," he began, his gaze fixed somewhere distant. I was busy restocking the cooler with drinks and paused to listen. "Avoid the shadows," he continued. "If the lights start to flicker and fail, stay within the illuminated areas. Have you ever actually seen these shadows?" I asked, unable to suppress my growing curiosity. Ray gave a non-committal shrug, his attention still partially on his coffee. "Once or twice. I don't ever want to see them again," he muttered. By 3 a.m., the atmosphere inside the gas station had become eerily quiet. The only sounds were the incessant buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead. I was growing increasingly restless when Ray broke the silence with another directive. "Third rule," he began, his voice low and serious. "That door at the back of the station, the one marked employees only, don't open it. Don't even get close. Just ignore it. It's better that way." My gaze shifted towards the back where an old, battered door stood. Its employees only sign, faded and peeling. I had barely noticed it before. Curious, I asked, "What's behind it?" Ray's response was typical. "Don't know, don't care to find out, but sometimes you might hear noises, scratching, tapping, maybe even voices. Ignore them. That door stays closed." His advice hung heavy in the air, adding a palpable tension. As the clock neared 4 a.m., weariness began to seep in. the monotonous hum of the station's lights, the soft whir of the refrigeration units, and Ray's intermittent cryptic advice were my only companions. Then, Ray shared a fourth crucial rule, his voice barely above a whisper. The light in the parking lot, the big one near the pumps, make sure it stays on. If it goes out, fix it immediately. Intrigued, I arched an eyebrow. What happens if it goes out? I asked. Ray put down his coffee cup, fixing me with a stern look. If it goes out, they'll come, and you don't want them coming. I decided not to press further about who they were. After 4 a.m., something felt off. While restocking shelves, I realized Ray was no longer behind the counter. There was no sign he had left or moved. It was as if he had simply vanished. Ray? I called out, moving towards the counter. There was no response. I scanned the gas station, checking the aisles, the restrooms, and even ventured outside to patrol the perimeter, but Ray was nowhere to be found. Ray was missing, and an unsettling silence pervaded the gas station. The back door remained firmly shut, and the darker recesses of the station seemed more menacing than ever. The air felt oppressively heavy, a chill running down my spine as a sense of dread mounted. Then, one of Ray's rules echoed in my mind: avoid the shadows. I kept to the brightly lit areas, heart pounding with fear. I wasn't sure if searching for Ray had broken a rule, but my instincts screamed that it had. The parking lot light began to flicker, sending a surge of panic through me. I dashed outside, fumbling desperately with the switch on the building's exterior. After 10 seconds that felt like hours, the light stuttered and then flooded the parking lot with a reassuring glow. Relief washed over me as I steadied my shaking hands. Returning inside, I found Ray nonchalantly seated behind the counter as if he had never disappeared. "Where the hell did you go?" I demanded, my voice raised in a mix of relief and frustration. I had searched everywhere for him. Ray didn't even lift his eyes from his coffee cup. "You shouldn't have looked for me," he muttered. Confused, I pressed on. "What? What do you mean?" "That's the last rule," Ray said, his voice weary. "If I disappear, don't look for me. What comes back might not be me. Don't talk to it. Don't acknowledge it. Just pretend it's not there." A chill ran through me as I processed his words, my blood turning ice cold. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded. Ray finally met my gaze, his eyes hollow, devoid of any emotion. "You broke the rule," he stated flat. My heart raced, a mix of confusion and fear knotting in my stomach. Was this some kind of twisted joke? How could he warn me against speaking to him if he wasn't really Ray? I took a step back, my mind whirling with questions. If this wasn't Ray, then what was it? And why would it warn me about itself? As I pondered, the shadows at the edges of the station seemed to deepen, ominously inching towards me. The parking lot light flickered once more, and this time I stood frozen, torn between disbelief and terror. The shadows appeared almost sentient, moving with a life of their own. The words reverberated through the gas station, haunting the silence left in the boy's wake. I turned away deliberately, shutting out the eerie sensation that tingled down my spine as his footsteps faded, eventually silenced by the chime of the door signaling his departure. Leaning against the counter, I tried to collect my frayed nerves, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. Ray, or whatever entity resembled him, remained perched behind the counter, his gaze distant and unfocused, offering no comment on the boy's visit. He simply continued sipping his coffee, oblivious or indifferent to the palpable tension. My eyes drifted toward the back of the store, where the employees-only door stood ominously at the end of the hallway. Though it had been just another part of the scenery before, it now seemed to embody the core of the station's malevolence. A faint scratching noise, barely discernible above the hum of the fluorescent lights, pricked at my ears, sending a shiver through me. Ray's earlier warning resonated clear and foreboding. Don't open it, don't knock, don't go near it. Yet the scratching persisted, evolving into a soft, rhythmic tapping as if knuckles rapped gently against wood. Rooted to the spot, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the "Please, let me out." The plea from the door echoed hauntingly as my instincts took over. I darted toward the front of the station, my every nerve screaming to distance myself from that ominous door and its desperate cries. Reaching the front door, I burst into the cool night air, filling my lungs in heaving gulps, the harsh fluorescent glow of the parking lot lights flickering ominously above. This time, I knew better than to leave them unchecked. No more close calls with the lurking shadows. My body trembled, both from exhaustion and fear, as a whirlwind of questions battered my mind. Who or what was confined behind that door? What had truly happened to Ray? Was the entity behind the counter actually him? And those cold, hollow eyes of the boy? What was the meaning behind that chilling gaze? The first hints of dawn began to seep into the sky, a subtle promise that night's end was nearing. All I needed was to endure a few more hours. Yet, Even as I stood vigilant by the station's entrance, a gnawing sense of wrongness grew stronger. Inside, the store's lights flickered briefly, and through the momentary darkness, I noticed it. Ray's chair was now eerily vacant. A wave of cold sweat washed over me as I surveyed the empty parking lot. No sign of Ray or anyone else. My heart pounded as I turned back to the store, attempting to piece together the night's bizarre and terrifying event. Then, the door creaked open behind. With tentative, slow movements, I faced the door. There stood Ray, or something that bore his semblance, his expression vacant, his eyes glassy and distant, his skin unnaturally pale. He remained motionless, silent. My throat went dry as I recalled the final rule he had imparted. Don't talk to it, don't acknowledge it. This figure couldn't possibly be Ray. But if it wasn't, then what was it? Why was it here? And why had it come back? As it took a step forward, I instinctively retreated, keeping my wary gaze fixed on the apparition. It wasn't him. It couldn't be. The first rays of the sun finally crested the horizon, casting pale light across the parking lot. I edged backward toward my car, never taking my eyes off the figure that haunted the gas station's threshold. The end. As I drove away, the night officially behind me, a pervasive sense of unease clung to me. If that thing wasn't Ray, then why did it tell me the rules? And more disturbingly, what else was it concealing? That was unequivocally my final shift at the gas station, a place I vowed never to return to.